Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Join us right now from one of the most beautiful places in the world, and not just picturesque, but beautiful in the sense of community. Franklin, Tennessee. Our guest is here today to celebrate her brand new book. It's called I Know Who I Am. Please welcome to the podcast, Dorena Williamson. Hey, Dorena. How are you?
Well, I'm so glad to be connecting with you, Jed, and thank you for the compliment of Middle Tennessee. It is absolutely a glorious place, especially this time of year.
It really is. And one of the things that my daughter pointed this out to me when we were touring and traveling to the South, to Tennessee, Virginia, and she would come back to Boston, and she attended a high school in downtown Boston. And on the way back home from a visit to Tennessee one time, she said, Pop, I'm walking down the street in Boston, and a middle-aged man can bump into me, and he'll turn and snarl at me and look at me like I did something wrong. Here in Tennessee, everybody, if I just, if someone just crosses in front of me, doesn't even make contact, they say, excuse me, and can I help you, and how are you? And it was so much friendlier and cordial in Tennessee. And I love Boston, but I absolutely knew what she was talking about.
Sure. Well, that Southern hospitality, it absolutely is a thing. And I will say that there are really sweet people in all sorts of places, as well in the North. And then there are some folks down here who may not be doused with that Southern hospitality quite as much. So, we do know that some of those things can be situational, but I am glad that she felt that warm welcome.
Now, I'm imagining that if there are people down south that aren't so friendly, that don't practice that Southern hospitality, they're probably folks who don't really know who they are.
Well, that could be true. Although I will also say I'm laughing because my mind is thinking about times that I would be in the grocery store when my children were little, and, people would just take it upon themselves not only to come up and give you hospitality, but then they would just kind of go in with telling you wisdom and maybe more of their life story than you wanted to hear while you were picking up your bread and milk. So there's all sorts of fun things about, on one hand, people wanting to have conversations that, maybe go on, and you think, well, gosh, are they here to buy their groceries? Or are they here to, connect with everybody down the aisles? That's what it is.
I had an experience where I was waiting. We were in a mall in the Nashville area, and I was outside of a store because I'm a guy and I don't go into the clothing stores. And I was there for maybe 10 minutes, and there was an older woman sitting next to me. And by the time my daughter came out, I knew all about her family and their husbands and their second and third husbands. It was.
Yes. It's really a thing. And when people come from other parts of the country, depending on whether they enjoy conversation, and of course that's varied for each of us too, whether we're more introverted or extroverted, but certainly if you want people to be willing to talk to you and treat you nicely in general, you definitely can get a good dose of that in this area.
Absolutely. Well, I want to know all about I Know Who I Am. Tell us all about it, please.
Well, that book was first, the first ideas of that book actually began on a trip to Rwanda. I had the opportunity to visit that beautiful country in November of 2019, just before the pandemic, began to sweep the world in 2020. And as I visited with families and children, I saw the glory of God on the land and her people. And I reflected on, scriptures. I know Isaiah 6 says that, the whole earth is full of God's glory. There's several places in the Bible that speak of God's glory being all over the world. And I thought about other places that I had visited and how the truth of God's word is that the whole earth shines with his glory. And I thought, boy, that would be a nice book to create for children that shows the diversity of cultures, the diversity of children's activities, but that thing that we all have in common, and that is that we are reflectors of the image of God. And so that's really where this book came from, wanting to give children an opportunity to hear the truth that God says about them and to see that truth as it rests on children from all around the world.
Well, what a beautiful place for a book to come from, and what a beautiful message to give to kids. Being a family of faith, we absolutely loved bringing our kids up knowing that they were created intentionally and that they were created by somebody who loved them dearly and who loved everybody else that was created and wanted us to do the same.
Yes.
And I just think that that's a beautiful message to share with kids. But I'm guessing there are people who are listening to this who are saying to themselves, well, I'm not Christian. I'm not Jewish. You quoted Isaiah. That's not my book. Is there anything in this book that my kids are going to enjoy?
Absolutely. Well, I like people to know where the book's ideas and passion are sourced from. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful thing about this book is that global message is one that can be enjoyed by all children. And I recently had the opportunity to share this book at a public charter school in Middle Tennessee. And the teacher of that particular class is my daughter-in-law. So I knew that she would welcome the children, just having another interaction with an author. That was really important to her. And certainly not, pushing anything about my faith values. I wouldn't do that anyway. Mm-hmm. But knowing that there are elements of that in the book. And after I read the story to the children, and they were very attentive to listen, we began to talk about each spread and the countries that were represented. And we had a fascinating global adventure as I asked them to guess each page and tell me, where do you think this is? And they easily guessed. I'm going to give a few little sneak peeks, at least verbal, to your audience. There's a spread of Mexico, and the children immediately guessed Mexico because the little girl in the story is wearing a top that is something that is very cultural for Mexicans. And some of the children were Mexican. And so they were like, I'm from Mexico. And they were so proud to say that they were Mexican and why they recognized that spread represented their country. Another spread had a little girl who is wrapped on her mother's back. And that is from an African country. And so some of the other children said, well, in my culture, we do that too. And so they began to draw from each spread as we guessed. And as I talked about geography, and these are third graders, so it was wonderful, to hear them guessing. They could guess Brazil. That's another country represented because they saw the yellow soccer jersey with the green trim. So again, that global presence, those things that kids have in common. Soccer is played around the world. Children love to dance and sing and climb trees. But they also really entered into the pride of talking about where their family's origins were from. And it was such a deeply meaningful moment for me because I thought, as I wrote this book, sourced from my faith, but certainly with a universal value, these precious third graders are showing me how wonderful it is for children to have a global adventure as they turn the pages of the book and as they see things that they have in common, and as they learn about children from other lands. And so this is absolutely a book that will give any family, any class, any neighborhood group even, an opportunity to really take a global adventure, because as you and I know, not all children will have the privilege of traveling around the world and visiting all of these places. And I will say I have not had that opportunity. I've been to a few places and hope to go to many more. But through the pages of a book, they can take that adventure and go from place to place and then come back to the story again, ask questions, do their own research to learn more about these places that they see. So again, it's really a feast for the eyes and a real international treat for the hearts of children.
You know, one of the things that we encourage families to do is to take a picture walk through a book. And this sounds like, it sounds like you and that class had a wonderful picture walk through that book. And that's such a great way to experience a book with your kids or with a classroom. It's just, what do you think these pictures are saying? Even if you take it before you read the book, it's just a wonderful way to help your kid develop comprehension skills. And again, it's just a super way to have a conversation about a book and help your kids develop that love of reading and hopefully ignite a love of adventure and exploring not only the world, but our other neighbors that are in the world.
Yes, absolutely. And that was another passion of mine and goal, was to cultivate that neighbor love, because as you know, our neighbor can literally be the person who lives proximate to us, you know, next door or down the street. But our neighbors are also global. You know, our neighbors are neighboring countries, and you know, we're all connected in humanity. And so I really hope that families will enjoy the conversations that may come from these stories, maybe even the parents or the caregivers or the adults sharing about other places that they've traveled in the world, and maybe an opportunity to recollect the things that they experienced and the ways that they have been influenced by people from other countries, and the ways that we get to enjoy other cultures in a way that's honorable.
Right.
That says you are seen and you are worthy. And as you mentioned, you know, you are dearly loved, which is, of course, the pivotal message of the book.
Absolutely. And, you know, we celebrate the fact that books can be beautiful mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And obviously, from your experience with that classroom, the kids were super excited when your book was their mirror and they were able to see themselves reflected on those pages. I love that, but I also really love stressing the beautiful window aspect of books, giving kids a chance to look and see cultures and kids from cultures that they may not meet in their everyday life, and help take away that otherness that sometimes we feel towards somebody that seems a little bit different from us.
Absolutely. And, you know, as I interacted with those precious kids, it was a richly diverse classroom. I mean, besides having children from Mexico, and I took a picture with those sweet kids, and also I took a picture with the spread of India with several children who were from India and from Egypt, I think was the other country that we had a nice group of students. But there were students from Iraq and South Sudan and Korea, and you know, they were very proud to say where their families were from. And I know my daughter-in-law's heart to really love and honor and celebrate her students. But I thought, boy, this is such a beautiful, priceless experience that these children have had. And I wish there was a way to just drop that richness and spread it around to communities, you know, where families may be in a silo, or maybe, you know, as they're listening to this, they're thinking, you know, how many children do our kids get to interact with that are not like our family, you know, that don't look like us, that don't have the same way of life, the same cultural expressions. And what a gift. As you said, I love Rudine Sims Bishop's work, and I often talk about the importance of children having those literary windows and mirrors and sliding glass doors, and hope that this book will be an opportunity for families to enjoy each one of those together.
Yeah, well, I am sure it will be. And, you know, one of the other things I love about books is that they can also kind of be like time machines, and they can take us back into time. And one of the things I wanted to speak to you a little bit about is your book, The Story of Juneteenth. We're publishing this episode right in the middle of June, and Juneteenth is, I think, is a holiday that really should be celebrated by everyone.
Yes, it should be. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to put that book in the world, because Juneteenth is a freedom celebration that we all should enter into, but it's hard to celebrate something that you're unaware of, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you know, The Story of Juneteenth is a board book. So it is, its first and primary audience is designed for those little hands that are not yet reading the words, but that are going to point to pictures, be able to turn those thicker pages, and even, you know, put them in their mouth. I mean, just the things that little kids do as they interact, their whole body interacting with a book. But it also is intended to be an introduction. So it's not an exhaustive history of Juneteenth. And in being an introduction, it's 250 words. So it was very difficult to condense the richness and the importance of that story, to go back to, you know, why Juneteenth even became a holiday and became a celebration, because freedom was so precious that it was denied, you know, to enslaved Africans in Texas, that news was delayed for over 2 years. And so it touches on the truth of that, which is uncomfortable, but it is truth that children deserve to be introduced to and then built on as they grow, right? So they can, you know, get other books and, you know, watch documentaries as they get older with their families. You know, there's a Juneteenth museum that is in the works in Texas. I think it's a few years out, but, you know, there are other museums, and other ways for families to incorporate learning so that their children, are equipped with that important truth and that important knowledge that they can build upon, as we go into Juneteenth. And then it really allows them to carry into July 4th as they talk about the preciousness of freedom that they understand, you know, as Juneteenth is considered our second, you know, Independence Day celebration, that it is also a reminder that freedom is very precious, that it should be valued by all. And Juneteenth is a holiday that is celebrated now around the world. And so people are leaning into those opportunities to say, freedom is precious. Freedom is so precious that it was denied to a group of people. And so let us never stop celebrating that, but let us also not repeat, as you spoke about, you know, learning kind of that time travel back. So I'm honored to have contributed to something that is a worthwhile landmark work, to introduce that important history to young children. But I've also had adults, Jed, say, this was great for me. I know it's a board book, but it's a great introduction. It's just a nice scan of, okay, if I know nothing about Juneteenth, this board book is a great way for me to begin. Yeah. And there's no shame in not knowing. The shame is when you don't know and you stay willful in that ignorance, right? But when
Absolutely.
you say, you know, I don't know a lot about this. And I didn't grow up as a Black American. I did not grow up learning about Juneteenth. A lot of people outside of Texas just have not been very aware. So again, I'm really honored that my name is on a board book for the youngest children, and in a way that families can grow and learn together and then build on that knowledge and value, how precious it is that we all can celebrate being free in our American context.
Absolutely. It's interesting you're talking about this board book being useful for adults. 2 or 3 years ago, I'm not sure, I had an incredibly talented student interning for me, and she came up to me. I always encourage kids, and I call them kids, they're students, young adults, come up with me with whatever idea. And she came and said, can we do an episode about Juneteenth? And I goes, sure, absolutely. She goes, it's so important to me. I said, fantastic. I'm really happy that you said that, because I know a little bit about it. I know Texas and delayed, but I don't know a lot about it. Tell me more about it. And she said, I really don't know all that much either. That's why I want to do the episode. And we did a great episode, and it won an award. And she is just, and she's doing amazing things with her life right now. But it was, like you said, it was, it's a word a lot of us are familiar with, Juneteenth, but we haven't really dug into it, and we don't have the knowledge of what it's all about and what it means to people and what it means to all of us.
That's right.
Because anytime somebody is being abused or hurt or enslaved, when they're not experiencing the freedom that we all should be experiencing, then we all suffer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I believe it's so important for the adults to model to children that we are teachable. Mm-hmm. And so I think, for you to say to your student, I don't know a lot about this, for her to say, well, I don't either. What a beautiful posture that I'm sure she's taken with her as she's doing the great things that she is, to say, instead of just saying, oh, I don't know anything about it, and sort of hanging your head low, say, you know what, I don't know anything about it, so let's learn together. Mm-hmm. And I say often to the parents, to the aunts and the uncles and the teachers and the faith leaders who lead youth and lead children, it is wonderful to say to children, I'm learning about this. This is something I didn't know about. Do you know about it? Well, let's learn about it together. Mm-hmm. That says to children that we don't stop learning. Mm-hmm. And as you know, it's not just what we say, it's what we demonstrate by the examples and how we live. And so if this is a subject that some listeners are saying, I don't know a lot about that, there's no shame in that you don't know, but say to the children in your life, let's learn together. Mm-hmm. Let's increase our knowledge together. Let's start here, and then let's continue to build upon it. And I think that really draws children into what it means to be global citizens again, to learn about history that may not necessarily relate to their context. Certainly if they're Americans, it does. But even, as I said, Juneteenth is a holiday that is celebrated around the world. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I just really love to encourage us as adults to influence children, that we draw them in with our humility and our willingness to be teachable and humans who are growing in knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I think it helps us circle back to where we started. When we know who we are, when we know that we are loved, it's a little bit easier for us to say, I don't know, maybe I can learn. Maybe we can learn together.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Knowledge is such a wonderful gift. And as I get older, I believe that I value it all the more. I value those wisdom keepers in my life, the grandmothers and the church mothers and the neighbors and the people who have been willing to share freely their stories and just guide, me along the path that I have walked. And I hope in this midlife season that I'm in, that I am having the opportunity to do the same, to be a wisdom keeper who is sharing in a generous way, and calling others to do the same thing.
Yeah. What a beautiful, beautiful thought. Speaking about learning, we need to learn where to go to learn more about you and learn more about I Know Who I Am.
Well, I would love listeners to go to my website, DorenaWilliamson.com. There are some fun, downloadable, book-themed resources there that folks can grab and share with the children in their life. They make for, again, this book would make for fascinating summer adventure to maybe take one country each week and do some deeper dives, maybe even do some research or maybe incorporate in where you eat or what you cook at home. So again, there's some great resources there, as well as for my other books. Several of the books have book theme resources that are free that can be downloaded, and you can enjoy, you can share them with the other children in your life. So that's a great way to learn more about my work. And then if folks want to connect with me, I am most active on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And I do respond to tags and messages. And my most favorite thing in the world is seeing children engaging with my books. So folks want to post any of those pictures, you will absolutely make my day. I also love doing school visits, whether they are virtual or in person, and really enjoy engaging with the classroom. So I know we're going to be in summer break, but if any of your listeners have some wonderful, summer offerings for students or are beginning to schedule for the school year, I'm actively scheduling. So would love to continue the engagement and share my books in any way that I can.
We've had a really, really wonderful time speaking to the author of I Know Who I Am, Dorena Williamson. Dorena, thank you so very much for being part of our show.
Thank you, Jed, for having me.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast and will join us for the next exciting episode. If you want to make sure you don't miss a second of the show, please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitch Radio, wherever you get your podcasts. And also be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com and download your copy of the Reading With Your Kids online magazine. It's free. It's available at readingwithyourkids.com. Just click on our blog. Before we go, I want to make sure that I give a big thank you to my team: Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Madison Dairies, Soji Franklin, Monica Rivera Sosa, Ann O'Leary. I want to give a big thank you to my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, and most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.